Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning back in once again to Queen Amadai TV Presents True Crimes. So as you're coming in, please feel free to go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Be sure to click the notification bell and click the word all so that you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Flow Records, Fight for Black, Louise, Queen Conscious, A.V. the Great, Crimson, Crimson Countess, Pearly, Terry Hinton. All right. Aaron, LeBron Watkins, SMCM LeVar. Let's go ahead and get into it. Cherokee to Cindy King. Okay, listen to this. This is quite a nefarious story, people. Just so you know. The horror of the Christian Newsom killings. What happened on Chipman Street? So, in one of Knoxville's most horrific crimes, Channon Christian, age 21, and her boyfriend Christopher Newsom, age 23, they were carjacked, kidnapped, raped, and slain in January of 2007. Now, 5 suspects were identified, and yes, they both were raped. Okay, one of the suspects was tried federally as an accessory. 4 others were tried in Knoxville County criminal courts. Now, a drug scandal involving the judge in those state court proceedings would upend the convictions against 2 of those suspects, and then new trials were held. The most recent was, I believe, in 2017 or somewhere around there. I can't recall. 2013, I mean. Okay, so through it all, the details of the horrors that this young couple went through and suffered, those eked out. But with each suspect pointing the finger of blame at the other and jurors limited by law in what they were allowed to know, the real story of what happened when the couple was taken hostage and ultimately slain has proved to be just as elusive as the court cases convoluted. Now, the News Sentinel has covered this case since the beginning, and with the aid of interviews and trial coverage and transcripts of each of the defendants' statements to the authorities, the newspaper can now offer up a snapshot of not only what happened to them, these 2 innocent people, but exactly what was done to them. And I'm going to be showing you the pictures of some of the criminals who did this. Now, this all happened on Chipman Street. A resident by the name of Lamarcus Davidson, he was broke and he was mad. He was angry. Now, his girlfriend, Daphne Sutton, had left him. He had no car and no way to earn money. They say selling dope, that's what I do. This is what Davidson would later tell the law enforcement officers. Law enforcement knew, however, that Davidson was not simply just a drug dealer. He was on parole for carjacking, and in the days leading up to the abduction of Christian and Newsom, he was suspected to have been a participant in a series of robberies. So now, in the days before the couple's abduction, Davidson's brother, Latalvis Cobbins, came to Knoxville from Kentucky to stay with him for a visit. He brought along his friend George Thomas and his girlfriend, Vanessa Coleman. Now, none of the 3 of them had jobs. Money, they didn't have any money, jobs, or vehicles. Cobbins and Thomas were homeless. Coleman had a salt-of-the-earth family to turn to for help, but chose not to. Davidson grew increasingly angry over the fact that he was viewed as a freeloader by his brother and his brother's guest. Now, he turned that anger onto Sutton. She ended up leaving him January the 5th of 2007. So a day later, Davidson had concocted a plan to solve all of his troubles. He, with the help of Cobbins and a buddy named Eric Boyd, they decided they were going to carjack somebody. Now, Cobbins insisted that he wasn't happy with the idea. He says, me and my brother got to arguing because he said he was going to do some crazy shites. This is what Cobbins told the police in an interview. He like, man, I'm fixing to carjack somebody, man. Try and get some money. I got to try to get me some money. This is what it says. So Christian and Newsom disappeared on January the 6th of 2007 from the Washington Ridge apartment complex where Christian's best friend had lived. Then hours later, Newsom's body was found alongside a road or alongside the railroad tracks near Chipman Street in East Knoxville. Now, he had been raped with an object and then shot 3 times. The final shot was delivered execution style. He had been gagged with a sock stuffed in his mouth. His ankles were bound with his own belts. His hands were secured behind his back. His face was wrapped in a bandana. His head was covered with a sweatshirt tied around his neck with shoelaces. Now, forensic evidence showed that he had been raped in the final hours of his life. He was forced to walk barefoot on to the railroad tracks, then ran parallel to Chipman Street, and then he was shot in the neck and the back. As Newsom lay paralyzed on the ground, the muzzle of a .22 caliber gun was placed against his covered head and fired. His body would later be wrapped up in a comforter, doused in gasoline, and set ablaze. Let me go to some of these comments. She said they were felons, and that's not an excuse. There are companies that specifically hire felons, or they could have started a business. Listen, there's plenty of felons that have jobs. That's not an excuse. There's plenty of felons that have jobs. Shannon D says, just why? Why even would someone do that? Clearly devils. Clearly devils. That's what they had to be, honey. Because this was nefarious. They did all this to these people. So sad, but let me continue. So then they set his body on fire after all of that. And here's the thing I want you to pay attention to. Now, this was absolutely torture because they made him walk barefoot to the railroad tracks. And then they told him run, like they're going to try to let him try to get away. And then they shot him in the neck and back. He was laying there paralyzed. Then they came over and put the gun close range to his head and shot him again. And then set him on fire after he was wrapped in a comforter. I mean, just heinous. Now, Christian, meanwhile, this is the female. Christian, meanwhile, was tied up inside the Chipman Street house of Davidson, a stranger to her. She was reportedly raped orally, vaginally, and rectally. At some point, she was savagely attacked in her genital region, either kicked or beaten with an object. She suffered 2 blows to the head and was dragged into the carpeted living room of Davidson's Chipman Street home. Bleach was sprayed down her throat. An apparent effort to destroy DNA evidence because they had orally raped her, mind you. She was hog-tied with strips of fabric from a bedding set, still alive now. Her body was encased in black garbage bags and her head wrapped in a white plastic grocery bag. Christian was then stuffed inside a trash can and left to die, slowly suffocating. She wasn't even dead yet. And they did all this. Suspect Boyd was long denied any role. He has long denied any role in the couple's abduction. With no forensic proof tying him to the crimes, authorities were left to prosecute him for hiding out at Davidson's after the slayings. He is serving an 18-year federal prison sentence as a result. But his statement to authorities provides striking details of the carjacking. Details that he insisted came from Davidson, not his own memory. Christian was angry with Newsom because he had tarried in picking her up from the party of a friend. Now they're talking about the couple here that got tortured and killed. Christian, that's the female, she was upset with her boyfriend Newsom because he had tarried in picking her up from a party of a friend. And as she sat in the front seat of her Toyota 4Runner parked outside, Newsom sought to set things straight, hugging and kissing her as he stood outside the car door, stood outside the driver's side door. Now, the couple never saw Boyd cruise up into the parking lots at Washington Ridge with passengers Davidson and Cobbins. An armed Boyd and Davidson jumped from the car, leaving Cobbins behind. Now, at that point, the pair intended only to rob Christian and Newsom of the SUV. Because remember, they said they're going to get a carjacking. They're going to do a carjacking so they can get some money. But as they approached the couple with guns drawn, headlights from another vehicle spooked them. They pushed the couple into the SUV. Testimony has shown that Christian and Newsom were bound in the SUV with whatever cords the assailants could find. Newsom was forced face down into the vehicle. A bound Christian was dumped into the back seat. Or dumped onto his back, I'm sorry. Now, with Davidson behind the wheel of Christian's SUV and Cobbins trailing behind in a car that Boyd had borrowed from his cousin, the crew headed back to Davidson's Chipman Street home. There was no doubt that the couple was going to die. Now, you have to imagine, you've seen these people's faces. They're carjacking you. They tied you up and thrown you in the back seats. And now they're taking you somewhere. You already know they're going to kill you because you've already seen their faces. 2 white people, 2 white kids. This effing fixing to get crazy, man. You know what I mean? That's what Cobbins said. Now, remind you, Cobbins was the one that was still in the car. Cobbins was the one who was still in the car. So when he finds out that they got 2 white people, 2 young white people, he's like, man, this is about to get real crazy. So Davidson and his cohorts, they're black. The victims are white. Racial differences have never been suggested as a motivator for what the authorities view as a random carjacking. Now, back at Davidson's Chipman Street home, with their bound and blindfolded victims in tow, an argument broke out among Davidson, Boyd, and Cobbins, Thomas and Coleman. Thomas and Davidson barely knew each other and neither liked the other. Lamarcus told Thomas that he was going to need him to do something so he could trust him. This is what Coleman told the police later on after they got caught. Said, I'm going to need you to do something so I can trust you because I don't know you like that. So the suspects admitted that they carried Christian's cooperation by promising her. This is what they told the female they kidnapped. They promised her that if she cooperated, she would be let go if she went along with their demands. She even called home. They said she even called home at gunpoint. Yeah, she even called home at gunpoint to create a false alibi to buy the suspects time in their murderous plots. None of the suspects concede involvement in Newsom's death, but trial testimony statements and forensic evidence suggest that Davidson, Cobbins, Boyd, and Thomas forced Newsom into the rear cargo compartment of the SUV, leaving Coleman behind with Christian. So they left Coleman with the female and took Newsom, which was the male. They took him. It's not clear if Newsom was raped before leaving Chipman Street or after. Boyd, who had male pornography cached on his phone, has long been suspected but never charged with raping him. He did it. He did it. Now, forensic proof of suspect statements indicate that Davidson forced Thomas to fire the first shot at Newsom, striking him in the neck. As he fell forward, another shot struck him in the back, and then Davidson delivered the kill shot to his head. Once back at Chipman Street, Boyd left. Davidson and Thomas stripped off their bloody clothes to be washed, and at some point, the pair gathered up a comforter and a gas can, and they left, presumably to burn Newsom's body. Meanwhile, Cobbins went into his brother's bedroom where Christian was still tied up. He says, I was pissed off. This is what Coleman said in the statement. Cobbins would later tell a jury that he promised Christian she would go free if she agreed to oral sex. Forensic proof showed that Christian was orally raped with such force, a membrane in her mouth was severed. These people are sick. DNA evidence shows that Davidson raped Christian both vaginally and rectally. But it is Coleman who authorities suspect delivered fatal blows to Christian's vaginal region, the force of which caused a massive pooling of blood. At some point, Christian was dragged into the living room, bleach sprayed in her throat. She looked absolutely horrified. This is what Cobbins told the police. He says, they made me go into the back room. When I came back into the kitchen, I seen them tying her up in fetal position. Fingerprint evidence shows that Davidson and Cobbins, who wrapped Christian, they wrapped Christian in trash bags. She was then stuffed alive inside a trash can in the kitchen of the Chipman Street house. Now, with Thomas convicted for a second time on Friday, and this was in 2013, and a jury delivering up a sentence of life with the possibility of parole. With a possibility of parole. Honey, he should get no... Matter of fact, they all should have got death penalty. I'm sorry, that's what they should have got. Okay? So the case finally seems over, except for a few rote hearings and appeals. It seemed like it was over. But Christian's father, Gary Christian, he said his fight was not over. He says the business at hand is done. That was the trials that he was speaking of. He said the work has just changed. We've got some laws that will go up to get some things changed in this horrible excuse for a justice system. He said it's all for the criminals and nothing for the victims. This is all so crazy. Well, hold on, because I'm going to show you all some pictures of these nefarious people who did it. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on just a second. Everyone, please get the likes up. Please like and share. Like and share. And they also have a video. Hold on, I'm going to show the video first. Okay? I'm not going to show the whole thing. Lethal injection is needed for these demonic beings. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what they deserve, honey. This is what they deserve, because this was just heinous. Okay.
Everybody just walked the streets. We don't know if we could have saved her life, but she wouldn't have sat there for 2 days in a trash can.
Anybody that knew Chris was his friend, and he had a smile that everybody just loved.
Chris was an excellent baseball player. A good boy, good kid, worked hard, had a lot of skills. Could have went on and played further if he'd have chose to.
She was a typical girl. I mean, she wasn't perfect. Nobody's perfect, but she was never gave us any trouble, always did well in school. She was beautiful, but what made her even more beautiful was the fact that she was not stuck on herself.
Channon Christian was a 21-year-old student at the University of Tennessee. Chris Newsom was a 23-year-old trim carpenter. Both were still living at home and had just begun to date in November of 2006. One Saturday evening, they planned to go to a birthday party for a friend, but instead they decided to stay at Shannon's best friend's apartment to watch a movie.
35, the phone rang that night, and he spoke to her on the phone. She called to check in, let us know that she was coming home rather than staying at Kara's that night. And I sat up, and she never came home.
We had not seen him since Saturday night, which that's not unusual. He was 23 years old, and he kind of came and went, with not a whole lot of restrictions at that age. And the way we discovered he was missing was Shannon's mother, Dina, called and said that Shannon didn't show up for work.
In the early morning hours of January 7, 2007, Chris Newsom and Channon Christian were carjacked and abducted from the Washington Ridge apartments. They were held captive in a house on Chipman Street near the Waste Connections building. Both were brutally raped and beaten. Chris was led to the railroad tracks near the house, where he was shot 3 times, twice in the back and once to the head execution style. Then his body was set on fire. On Monday, a body found on the railroad tracks was identified as Chris by a homicide detective who had known him through his son.
Detective Snodderly says it's Chris. We asked, well, how do you know? And he said, I recognized him by his eyes. Everything fell apart at that moment.
All of his friends walked in. There must have been 15 or 20 of them come in all at the same time. And that just gave me such an eerie feeling. So I thought, why isn't Chris with them? And it really put chills through me. I thought, here's all his friends and he's not here. And that was one of the hardest moments.
I got a phone call and it said, man, there's something going on up here at this house by the trash place. And then I got another call that said that they thought that they had found her or somebody, because they were bringing in there was an ambulance that had just gotten there.
Shannon Christian was kept alive inside the house for several hours as her captors repeatedly raped and tortured her. A chemical substance was poured down her throat and on her body in an attempt to destroy DNA evidence. She was then bound, put inside 5 trash bags, and then shoved inside a trash can where she was left to suffocate. She died with her eyes open. 5 people have been indicted in these crimes.
Do you know how quick that Shannon and Chris that carjacking went down? You come down your stairs and you go get in the car and you are cranking your car and your boyfriend gets inside the door there, gonna get him a little sugar. Boom! There's a gun in the back of your head, and some big sucker gets in your 4Runner and puts a gun on you just like that. It's done.
I've covered cops, courts, and crime in East Tennessee for about.
I'm gonna fast forward people because this is like 16 minutes long.
We had heard a report on TV.
Hold on.
And we've
They were always into something. And I do believe firmly, and some of the people that I run along with, that when you practice a lot of deceit and when you're involved in a lot of things like that, it's going to catch up with you. And I think it caught up with them.
I don't believe that it had a negative effect on the African American community as a whole, because the African American community is not responsible for the acts of a few individuals who went past the bounds of human decency.
Whether we want to recognize it or not, a case like this sometimes exposes veins of racism that we kept hidden.
As a result of this crime, the community has become more vigilant concerning its safety.
I think a lot of people don't believe that things like that can happen here to them. And when they realize that, you know, there's monsters among us, they're coming in here, they want some protection. They want to know.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it right there, people. Oh. Now that was clearly drastic, was it not? I mean, what were they thinking? Who does that? And if you were going to do a carjacking, what made you resort to all of that? I'm just curious. It sounds to me like some sadistic, satanic, serial killer type stuff. Okay? That was so heinous. It was a sister involved. Damn, says Eric. Yep, it sure was. Some of our people are definitely evil. I have known a few in the past as dark-skinned brother. Okay? Just being so, keep the same energy with your pink monsters crimes as well. Just biz. Dark-skinned brother says evil comes in all different colors. It does. This is true. Mary said they don't forgive black people like black people forgive them. This is true also. I told you all that numerous of times. In this case, they shouldn't forgive them, though, because I darn sure would. Okay? So they had to be demon-possessed queen. I mean, something was not right about that. Who does that? And then they raped the guy, too. That was sickening, but I get tired of Mayo always calling everyone monsters. Yeah, this is true. These demons knew what they wanted to do, and those are who we can just fall off. Okay? Black women stand up, said they learned it from Whitey. Vince I am said, I wasn't expecting the culprits to be black. I know, right? I never heard of black people doing such heinous, atrocious things. I mean, clearly. But you know what? That sounded like a lot of stories that we've heard happen to black people from racist white folk. That's what it sounded like. Somebody said, let fall off. I got you, beloved. Okay. Melanated Brown says, total drastic overkill. And like I always say, some of us are trying to catch up to Neanderthal nefarious behavior. I'm going to need to burn my sage right now, says Silent D. I mean, really, because that was just also nefarious. I mean, like, why would you do that to somebody? And the fact that they left the poor girl in there tied up for days or for hours, did all that raping to her and all that stuff, and then pouring bleach down her throat. Can you imagine? And then they put her in 5 trash bags and put her in a trash can and left her there to slowly suffocate. What a horrible death. I mean, can you imagine something so heinous, honey? It is clearly some demons walking around here cloaked in flesh. And unfortunately, some of them are black. Okay? It's just awful. It is absolutely dreadful. Anyway, so with that all being said, people, I'm going to conclude this broadcast because next I'm going to be talking about Diane Downs. I keep changing the time on this other live. It's going to start in 2 minutes, people. So let's go ahead and get ready to go, to the next live. I want to thank you all for tuning in once again to Queen Amadai TV Presents True Crimes. Okay, yes, they were devils, and they tortured her. Yes, they tortured them both. Can you imagine? They raped that young man first and then made him walk barefoot on the tracks and then told him to run like they're going to let him try to escape, and only to shoot him in the neck and the back, paralyze him. You lay there helpless and hopeless, and then they come over and shoot you in your head and kill you. Crazy. Anyway, thank you all for tuning back in. We need some spiritual vitamins today, very soon, Queen. That's okay, dark skin brother. I got you covered. Okay, I got you covered. I'm going live on that channel today. I can't say exactly what time yet, but I'm going live on there. Okay. As a matter of fact, I will say what time. I'm going live on the spiritual channel at 12 o'clock. Okay, at 12 o'clock. I'll see you all there. So thank you all for tuning back in once again. I hope to see you all in the next chat. Peace.